If there's any genre where I could just pick up and play and have fun in short bursts, whether it be at the arcades or at home, it's the beat 'em up or brawler. I enjoy the simplicity of the gameplay combined with the challenge of beating up waves of bad guys or girls surrounding you. In my opinion, it's the best genre for co-op play. In this edition of a chip off the old pixel, we'll take a look at a couple of brawlers, the first of which is none other than Final Fight, which was developed by Capcom and released in arcades in 1989. Final Fight's original working title was Street Fighter 89, making it a planned sequel to the one-on-one fighter released 2 years earlier. Since both games featured vastly different gameplay, the Street Fighter 89 name was dropped. While we're using Final Fight as the base game in this video, it drew influences from earlier brawlers like Renegade and Double Dragon in terms of the settings and storyline. The plot consists of Guy, Cody, and Hager fighting their way through Metro City to rescue Hager's daughter Jessica, who was kidnapped by Mad Gear. Final Fight popularized the concept of having selectable characters with unique abilities plus strengths and weaknesses, with Guy being the fastest of the group with the weakest attacks, along with an off-the-wall jump. Cody is the most balanced fighter of the three and is capable of repeatedly stabbing enemies with the knife. Finally, Hager is the strongest but slowest of the group, and he dishes out serious damage with the backdrop and pile driver. Growing up, Hager was my favorite character to use, but these days I go with Cody or Guy. Final Fight is noted for its arsenal of attacks. Each character has a canned combo which can damage multiple enemies at once, which is a bit over the top but a cool feature. In addition, canned combos can be cancelled into a throw or a backdrop if you're using Hager, which is helpful in knocking over multiple enemies if you're surrounded. You can grab enemies to deliver knee shots or headbutts and combine them with throws or other moves like the devastating pile driver for additional damage. If you're completely surrounded by enemies, you can pull off a special attack which will damage all enemies in range at the cost of some of your health. Though they're not the first game to do this, Final Fight has plenty of breakable objects like foam boots, oil drums, and crates, which conceal items that will restore your health or boost your score, along with weapons to bash or slice the Mad Gear. They threw in a couple of bonus stages where you smash a car to bits, which leads to the memorable line, "Oh my god," or car in the Super NES version, along with smashing glass panels, though no one comes out screaming, "Oh my glass." I always expect that, but it never happens. Final Fight features a memorable and diverse cast of enemies that vary greatly in terms of appearance, speed, strength, and attacks. It's one of the very few brawlers in which I can remember every enemy's name. You got the knife-wielding Hollywood and Elgato, to the charging Bill Bull, to the punk rockers Axel and Smash who block most of your attacks. Some of the names and likenesses of the enemies were taken from pop culture, with the best example being the Underays, who were based on professional wrestler Andre the Giant. When Final Fight was ported to the Super Nintendo, there was controversy involving the two scantily clad female enemies Roxy and Poison. As a means to censor violence against women, they were replaced with male characters Billy and Sid. This came after prior ports of arcade brawlers for the NES, like the aforementioned Renegade and Double Dragon, retained its female enemies. To further the controversy, there's the issue with Poison's gender. Final Fight is noted for having upwards of 10 enemies on screen, which was very impressive for its time and still is today. With all the on-screen chaos, slowdown and sprite flickering does occur. Final Fight has left a lasting impact on the video game industry. Its popularity has led to many releases for home consoles across many generations, whether as a standalone release or as part of compilation packs. Although it did not receive any sequels in the arcades that were brawlers, 2 console-exclusive sequels were released for the Super Nintendo. Many of Final Fight's characters have been featured in fighting series such as Street Fighter and Capcom vs SNK. On a personal note, I spent lots of time back in the days, whether it be in the arcades or on my Sega CD, playing Final Fight, and to this day I still play it on a regular basis, either at Barcade or on the go for my PSP, and I never get tired of it. Final Fight no doubt is my favorite brawler of all time. While Final Fight was far from the first brawler ever released, it stands out from its peers with its smooth and responsive controls, detailed backgrounds and large character sprites, plus vast amounts of on-screen enemies to deal with. Final Fight has had a large influence on beat-em-ups that were released afterwards in terms of the fighting mechanics or the playable characters, with Cody being the most commonly emulated character, thus making these releases a tough act to follow. While some of them were successful and others weren't, you felt Final Fight's presence in these games, and we're going to take a look at one of them right now. Burnick Fight is a 54 megabit brawler released for the Neo Geo in 1991. It's set in Osaka, Japan, where the Katsura crime family, which originated in Metro City, has joined up with the Hayawagumi crime family to take over the city. Two detectives, Billy King and Duke Edwards, who had been tracking down the Katsuras back in Metro City, joined forces with Osaka detective Ryu Sayaba to take down the two crime families once and for all. Burnick Fight follows the trope of having the three playable characters differ in terms of strength and moveset. In addition, the characters closely resemble their Final Fight counterparts in terms of appearance. Ryu, who bears a striking resemblance to Guy, has the weakest attacks. Duke, who resembles Cody, has average attack strength. Finally, Billy, who is the largest of the three, has the most powerful attacks. In a two-player game, you can inflict damage on your partners, so you have to steer clear from each other. Burnick Fight's controls consist of a punch, kick, and jump button. Punches are quick but do low damage. Kicks are slow but have slightly longer range than punches and are more powerful. While you have the canned combos, you can combine attacks from both punches and kicks to dish out extra damage. Like in Final Fight, your attacks can damage multiple enemies at once. You can grab an enemy if you're in close proximity to them, and pressing either attack button executes a throw. And if you're using Billy, he can also do a headbutt if you move forward and press either attack button. If you press both the punch and jump buttons at the same time, you'll perform a special move which drains some of your health. Ryu does a spinning kick, Duke does a tornado uppercut, and Billy does a charging attack that knocks down any enemies in his path. You have to fight your way through 5 stages, which consists of areas that are common in most brawlers. You'll fight in the city streets, in a shopping mall, a construction site, on a cruise ship, and even on top of a subway train. Now that takes guts. In some stages, you have to deal with hazards. For example, on the subway, you have to avoid getting shot at by a helicopter in the background, and in the docks, you have to avoid falling beams. You can backtrack to a degree in the section of the level you're currently in, which Final Fight did not allow with very few exceptions. It gives you more room to fight enemies, but the disadvantage is that you can't lose them like you could in Final Fight. One aspect of Burnick Fight that sets itself apart from Final Fight is that you can enter certain buildings where you can pick up items to fully restore your health or greatly boost your score by destroying objects. These areas also include enemies, so watch out. You can also destroy objects outside of buildings to obtain items that will restore your health or increase your score. You can obtain weapons by knocking them from enemies. Items and weapons will disappear if they're not picked up after a few seconds. You have a lot of weapons at your disposal. There's a knife, a bow staff, a bottle, sticks of dynamite, and even a handgun. Pressing the punch button will utilize these weapons. You can still perform moves like a standing or a jump kick while holding a weapon. Weapons will disappear after a few uses. In addition, you can knock over certain objects to defeat enemies, which was something you could not do in Final Fight. While the number and variety of on-screen foes in Burnick Fight doesn't compare to Final Fight, they make up for the lack in numbers with their speed and aggression. The enemies in this game employ a wide arsenal of attacks. They are very reliant on weapons, and some will use vehicles like motorcycles and forklifts. You even have one battle where you have to destroy a truck while avoiding Molotov cocktails that are thrown from the vehicle. There's even one character that performs certain unpleasurable acts on you, which is very creepy. Once you clear the screen of enemies, keep on moving. If you're idle for too long, more enemies will appear. The one aspect that makes Burnick Fight difficult is that when you get knocked down, there's no way to quickly get back up. Wiggling the joystick doesn't work. Enemies will continue to attack while you're down, and this can result in you getting hit again once you recover. The fat enemies with the charge attacks are the biggest offenders of this. You really don't have much time to react, therefore you end up losing lots of lives this way. The bosses are very overpowering, and some will block your attacks. Having a second player will come in handy in these situations. There is one boss in Burnick Fight that does resemble Hulk Hogan. The last stage features a boss rush, which is a common feature in Neo Geo brawlers. Duke Edwards made an appearance as another striker in The King of Fighters 2000, which marks the only appearance of any Burnick Fight character in other SNK released games. Burnick Fight was one of many brawlers that flooded the arcade and console scene throughout the late 80s and early 90s, so it was not easy to stand out from the rest of the pack. Burnick Fight features some detailed backgrounds and generously sized character sprites. Having 2 attack buttons is a nice feature, giving you several options for attacks. In addition, there are plenty of weapons available to add to your attack arsenal. The bonus rooms are a nice feature to take a break from the action. I like that there are some portions of the game where you rely on dodging projectiles and other hazards. The soundtrack is solid with some catchy themes. The voices could have been clearer considering what the Neo Geo is capable of. Now, the biggest issue I have with Burnick Fight is the difficulty. While I don't mind a challenging game, Burnick Fight is downright unfair at times, especially during the last 2 levels. Not being able to recover quickly from knockdowns, combined with the aggressiveness of the enemies, leads to plenty of lost lives, so thank goodness for infinite credits. There are hit detection issues where you either don't land your hits when you feel like you did, or enemies have priority over your attacks. The controls for jumping and special attacks could use more refinement. They feel sluggish. The enemy cast isn't diverse, but their multitude of attacks makes up for this. Boss battles are repetitive, and this doesn't include the boss rush in the final stage. I think Burnick Fight had the potential to be a really good brawler, but it could have used more polish. A sequel would have helped, but unfortunately that never happened. While I can't say that Burnick Fight is a chip off the old Pixel from Final Fight, I still consider it to be an okay brawler, and I have found myself beating this game many times, and I think that you should give it a try if you're a fan of the genre. It's a more enjoyable experience with 2 players than if you're going solo. Burnick Fight will take about 40 minutes to complete, which is standard for its time. The most accessible option to play Burnick Fight is on the SNK Arcade Classics for the PS2, PSP, and Nintendo Wii. To wrap things up, we'll take a side-by-side look at Final Fight and Burnick Fight. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks for watching.